Hi, today we're going to look into what event data inside of Toddle is. And if you're going to build a web application inside of Toddle, it is unavoidable to work with event data. And today I want to show you what it is, how you can make it visible while you're developing with it, and actually why it is a very cool thing to work with and how it can help you inside of components to work with data more efficiently. So let's look at this together. So right now we're inside of the Toddle editor, and this is where all the magic is happening. And we have an input field right now, and you have the functionality to bind it to a variable, but we're not going to do it in this video because we want to understand how event data works and what it actually does. So let's look at this input and let's look at events. And we want to look at the input event. We got a bunch of events, but you're interested in input. And let's actually log to the console. Let's go on the FX and we're logging the input event of this. So think about it like this. I'm inputting something in here. Okay? Every time something is inputted, every character, every deletion is called and is in an input, is an input. This input itself, this action of me inputting something into the form, has data attached to it because it's the input data. So let's visualize this. Right now I'm logging the whole input object to the console. So let's inspect elements real quick. I didn't like Wiz doing this. I don't like Toddle doing this either. Let's inspect elements and let's oh, come on. Let's inspect this one. Okay, here we go. Now I can do whatever I want. Haha. Beautiful. So we got that working. Beautiful. So let's go at the console and let's start inputting something. And you see, every time I input something, data is being sent, because right now, every time an input is there, we're logging the whole input data. Let's look at a random data input here. So in here, we have input, and we have the target value, and in the target value, we have a bunch of data, a bunch of it, right? So we have class name, we have inherit, we got a bunch of different things in here. And we want to look at the value of the target because you see there's a bunch of things in here, and we want to look at the value of it. So what we can do now, let's try logging the target, right? So let's open DevTools again and let's go to the console. And now let's start typing hello. Now we see we're logging like the HTML of this element because that's like the target, which is still not what we want. We want the value of the target. So now let's log the value. And now let's go and inspect elements again. And now let's type hello. And you see, I always get, every time I make an input event, I get the current value of what is in there. So this is great for setting variables. It's a reactive approach. Now this is what events tell us. So the event data in here would be hello. And we can use this event data to set what's called a variable. So let's create a variable called value, right? And this will start out empty. And let's add a heading on this page, right? And I'm going to go fx and I'm going to set the value in here. So right now there is no value. And let's also go to the div here and give it a gap of 1 rem. So there's a little bit more space in there. So now if I were to type hello, the variable is not saying hello. So we want to bind it. I go in this input, I go on events, and I go on input event, and I add a plus, and I go set variable, and now I got my event data. and I do event target value. And now, as you can see, if I'm going to type in hello, the text is going to say hello too, because it gets the event data that is inside of the form, and this is how we store the data that is inside of a specific input field. If I were now to look at the variable, we see we got the value, and we could now use this variable to send the specific value that is in the form to an API. Now, what if the variable changes, right? The variable will be Google, but the input does not reflect Google. We can go on this input field on attributes, and we can go to the value attribute, go on fx, and bind it to the value variable. Now, if I update the input and make it hey, the variable is being updated using the input data. And if I go to my variable and I make it hello, the input is being updated. That's the easy example for working with input data. Now, there is a different thing we can do. On input, let's actually remove the value attribute in here, and let's change the type of this input. Let's make it a file. Now we have a file uploader. Now the whole game changes, because if I'm uploading a file, I'm uploading data, right? And now we see fake path, and we don't get the data, right? So we need to get a file object in this example. So how are we going to do that now? Right now, let's look at how we can work with event data in here. And we don't need the heading anymore. Let's look at input, and we want to look at the input event. And let's go to the console log again. So log to console, and I want to go to the event data, right? So now let's open inspect elements again. Let's go to the console, and let's try uploading a file. Now, after I uploaded the file, we'll see the event data. And we have also target, and the target doesn't contain value, but it contains something called files. You see target, files, and in the files, I have my file data. This is the file data. So we see we can go to input, and now if I go to target, there is no files, there is only value. But if I were to log target value when uploading a file, let's go to inspect elements again, right? I would be getting C fake path, and this is not a file. So we need to use the get filter to get it. So we actually only want to look and log event target. Let's try this again. Let's go on inspect elements, let's go on console, and let's try uploading the file again. And let's see what the event data tells us. Now we're getting the HTML. Okay, so we're getting close, but we need to log this called files, because we saw we had this files object. So this event data here is data. Now, we don't have the pre-selected files inside of Toddle. So we can add a get filter and add files in here. And now the event data should only show that is being logged the files array. Let's upload a file. And now we see we got an array of files. Now in this example, I only upload one file. So what I could do, I only want to get the first item. So I could add the first filter like this in the event data. And now the event data I'm working with, when I upload a file, will be null because the first is not working, because we're actually sending an object. So let's remove the first filter and let's make it a little bit different. We're going to add another get filter, and that will have in brackets. So actually we need to add an array, and this array will contain the value of 0. So this is a way how we can get the first item in an object, because it's not an array, it's actually an object. We have an object that contains multiple sub-objects that are the files. If we want to get the first object, there is no path, there is no like first object. You know, this path is hidden, and this is putting a 0 in an array. That's how we get the first one in Toddle. So now let's go back to inspect. let's go to console. And now when I upload a file, let's look at the event data. We're now only getting the file data. This is the file object that we're logging in. Now, we could even turn this, I think, to base 64, possibly. Let's look at this. Encode to base 64. We'll get a base 64 string. Okay, let's encode this to base 64. So now I could even go on inspect, just like that. And I could get this. And I'm getting null because that is not working. This is probably where we want to add some custom functionality, but this is the file. This is the file object here. I can go on inspect. Here we go. I upload that. That's the event data I'm getting. I can work with that. Now, I ideally want to set it as a variable. So I can just copy the last part in the notes. I'll delete this and I go to my value attribute and I'll just paste it in here. And now when I upload my file, we are having the file in here. You can't see it, but we have the file stored in here. And now we can, send that file as is to a backend. This is how a backend will receive it. But I made a video on files, so I don't want to go too deep in this, but the beauty here is using the event data on input events to get the file data that was added in the file input field. This is how we synchronize what the user is inputting on an HTML level with our variables that manage state and then send that data to the backend. It's very important to understand how events work. Those are the two most common use cases for events. Now, there are also other types of events. Let's look at those. For example, probably a useless one, but you may use it. So there are multiple events that can be cool too. Let's add actually a div block in here. And let's make this div block 5 rem and 5 rem. And let's give it a background color of black. And let's make it round 100% border. So we got this black blob, whatever. Okay, that's cool. And now I can go on this main div and I can look at events and I can look at mouse and I look at mouse move. And let's see what we're doing here. We got mouse move and I set the value. And first of all, actually, let's set the value variable with mouse move. And we got X and Y. Okay, that's cool. Okay, page X, page Y. That's what we want to do. Okay, let's do something cool. Okay, let's go to the variable here. Let's create already a structure for this variable. So we create an object and I call this X empty and I do Y and that's empty. So I got X and Y in this variable. So cool. And now I go on this here and I look at mouse move. And now I'm going to restructure a little bit. I'm going to get my variable in here. I'm going to use the set filter and the key will be X. And then I'm going to add my event data because I have this object. I'm setting the X value using the set filter. And that will be page X, right? And then I'm doing the same thing. Let's add another set filter. And I'm setting Y. And now I'm going to add the event data for page Y. Beautiful. Now let's just, before we do the next step, let's add a heading in here. Yeah, let's click in here. And that will have the value. And because this will now say object, we're just adding the JSON filter. So it's easier for us to see. Okay, here we go. Now, what happens if I move my mouse? We see that those are being calculated because we're updating the event data. Now, I could go in this div block and I could add a style variable for its position. So we would add spacing. And let's call this, let's do left, or let's call this X, right? And let's make this pixels, right? And this will be based on the value for X. And let's create another style variable called Y. and then we're based on the value for y. And now I can make this absolute, and I'm going to look at left will be based on x. Let's see. Here you go. Now that's moving. And now I can go in here and I can make this, I think it's bottom, and I can make this x. Oh, no, this is not bottom, this is top. And top will be based on x, on y. And now as you can see, this blob is following my cursor, my mouse, because as I move my mouse over the main div, I'm getting the event data from the mouse move. And I can use this event data now to update a variable that uses style variables to update the position, the top left position of the absolute position of this div block. Here you go. And if I want to make it draggable across the screen, I could only run this when, for example, the one is clicked, and I would probably make it a little bit, move it to the side. But you get the idea. So this is also how you can then make elements dragging across the page. Now it's focused only on the mouse move event. But this is how we can use event data to make actually pretty neat things inside of Toddle. So this is event data. And I hope that you now know how to work with event data inside of Toddle. And if you want to learn more about event data, and if you want to make more cool things inside of Toddle, I would highly suggest you to look into the NoCode Pro Code membership. We got dozens of hours of educational courses, step-by-step courses, to help you get a head start with your new project that you're working on. We have a component library with pre-built components for Stripe elements. Stripe Connect is also coming. For file uploads, for authentication, for passkeys are coming too, for SMS authentication, for really everything you could ever imagine that you would like to have. We got that. And it's coming weekly new templates, daily new content and courses. We got the Frame boilerplate, which is basically everything you need for your SaaS in Toddle pre-built. So you just copy paste and 90% or probably 80% is done. And then you just customize it, change the theme, and connect with the APIs you want to connect to, and it's secure. Payments are set up. You just change your API key, and you have authenticated endpoints all pre-built, so you make sure that only people who pay for your subscription are using your endpoints. We got that all set up for you with over 5 hours of courses to help you master that template and set it up properly, and understand also how it's working on the behind the scenes. We got also daily support office hours. So if you have any questions on setting up that template, any roadblock in Toddle with that, here to help Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. PDT. And then we got pre-made XAML snippets, because a lot of times starting with the database and the data structure can be confusing, especially when we are talking about loops and loops and loops. And we got most of those things pre-set up. We got pre-made XAML snippets for file management, member management, authentication, Stripe, everything that you really need. And we got exclusive private tutorials on, for example, fonts and how to do those tricks, and some of the edge cases that we don't really talk about on YouTube. And if you want to join, everybody loves it so far, and I think we've been doing this since over a month, and everybody really enjoys it. Lee loves it, Greg loves it, everybody loves it. Leonard built his probably the most controversial Toddle app ever, 50% faster. Yeah, so everybody loves it. And if you want to join, it's super simple. You make a video application during beta, and it's within 12 hours, we'll send you the link to join. Right now, it's just a manual process, because we want to make sure that the value we have on there is actually something that will help you in your development journey. And even Web3 developers love it. So yeah, and it's pretty affordable. It's $79 a month. Now, don't look at that. This is like if you want this for your whole company and you need NDAs, and I need to schedule like daily, every day of the month, like a custom office hour only for your company, because you're talking about secret stuff. Probably not going to happen if you see this video, unless you have a agency that wants to benefit from that. Don't look at that. This is what you're looking for, $79 a month. You get access to to Toddle and Xeno templates, pre-made components, step-by-step courses, no-code SDK snippets, so like Stripe elements and all of that, daily office hours, 24/7 support, right? And if you look, with the courses and the office hours and the great educational resources you get, and consider that I normally charge $500 an hour, it's a pretty good deal. But that was enough advertisement. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for all your support. And thank you so much for watching this YouTube channel. It really means the world to me. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to help. And see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.